Drone footage. Column Russian army tank explodes in terrible artillery fire. Ukrainian military. Watch the moment Ukraine's army obliterated a camouflaged Russian tank in Luhansk Oblast. The destruction of the Russian tank took place in the eastern regions. Drone footage released by Ukraine's army showed the camouflaged tank was surrounded by tire tracks, making it easy to locate by opposition forces from the sky or on the ground. The Russian tank can be seen to erupt into flames as a ball of smoke rises up into the sky when hit by Ukraine artillery forces. The attack comes in the wake of heightened tensions between the two countries, as both neighboring countries have been ramping up their war efforts, which have in turn intensified the battle on the front lines. Drone footage released by Ukraine's military showed the moment they tracked a camouflaged truck in Luhansk, Oblast. Ukraine's military used heavy artillery fire to hit the Russian tank. The Russian tank can be seen to explode when fired at, causing a large blast on impact. Thick black smoke can be seen billowing out of the destroyed tank as a fire burns below. Military expert Dr. Mike Martin claimed that the British government needs to send more armored vehicles like tanks and more ammunition to Ukraine in order to help them fight the Russian onslaught. Dr. Mike said, "War is extraordinarily expensive and, actually, often the weapons are not necessarily the most expensive thing. To run an army, you need huge amounts of ammunition, which is very expensive. And as, you know, Ukraine is starting to go on the offensive now, those demands are going to increase. You need a lot more ammunition to have an offensive than to defend, for instance. And I think what we probably need to see is some shifts in what is supplied to Ukraine. What we have seen over the last week was quite a rapid assault by Ukrainian forces. That is the kind of style of warfare that they are practicing against the Russians. And what you need particularly for that is armored vehicles, or at least mechanized fast vehicles. That is quite different to what the West has been predominantly supplying, which have been artillery and defensive weapons. So, as Ukraine moves to liberate more areas to push the Russians out of more occupied territory, they will need an increase in armored vehicles and lots of ammunition. Meanwhile, the attack deals yet another blow to Vladimir Putin's troops as Russia is running out of ammunition. Ukrainian forces triggered an incandescent explosion by striking a stockpile of Russian mines and Grad rockets in the east of Ukraine. Footage shows the Ukrainians locating the mines and the ammunition before targeting it. The massive explosion detonates and its sheer power can be heard from miles away. The brazen fire is swiftly followed by a shock wave that burns all the surroundings on its path. A plume of dark smoke can then be seen covering the region and shaping into a cloud-like form. The explosion of ammunition deals yet another blow to Putin forces' capacity to fight in Ukraine. Stockpiles of weapons, ammunition, and heavy ordnance like the cruise missiles that hit Kyiv on Monday are reportedly running low. We know, and Russian commanders on the ground know, that their supplies and munitions are running out, the director of the UK intelligence agency Sir Jeremy Fleming said during an annual lecture at a security think tank, according to the BBC. The mobilization of prisoners and inexperienced men in Russia speaks of a desperate situation, he said, adding that President Putin is isolated and making mistakes. Mr. Fleming said, with little effective internal challenge, his decision-making has proved flawed. It's a high-stakes strategy that is leading to strategic errors in judgment. Since last weekend's explosion of the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, Russian forces have targeted Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure in several cities across the country. Around 30% of the infrastructure has been damaged, according to Ukraine's energy minister. The leaders of the G7 on Tuesday condemned Russia's most recent missile attacks on Ukraine in the strongest possible terms and pledged to stand firmly with Kyiv for as long as it takes. Following a meeting with President Zelensky, the leaders issued a joint statement saying the indiscriminate attacks on innocent civilian populations constitute a war crime by Russian forces. In renewed calls for help, the Ukrainian president, whose forces are also running out of military equipment, asked G7 leaders to supply more air defense systems. Ukraine's leading international supporters like Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron have pledged more support, with U.S. President announcing a new $625 million security assistance package and the French leader reaffirming his full support in a phone call with President Zelensky. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the military alliance is monitoring Russia's nuclear forces and that any deliberate attack against allies' critical infrastructure would be met with a united and determined response.